I always thought endings would feel more complete. Like something inside you would click shut, a filing cabinet closing on a long life of effort. But retirement crept up quietly, like fog on a Tuesday morning. No thunder, no drumroll. Just a final attendance report and a sheet cake in the teacher's lounge with my name spelled right for once. That night, Amanda organized a small dinner. Nothing extravagant, just the way I liked it. A dozen familiar faces in a rented back room at the old Italian place we used to take the kids to after-school concerts. Dim lighting, soft jazz, white tablecloths. The wine was flowing, the bread never stopped, and my colleagues took turns standing awkwardly to toast Mr. Hayes, the man who had somehow taught high school English for 42 years without strangling a single student. I smiled through it all. I meant it. I'd always found joy in quiet things, commas in the right place, Shakespeare taught to someone who finally cared, a kid who learned to write a proper sentence and didn't know they could. That had been enough for me. Amanda sat beside me the whole time, her hand resting lightly on my arm, laughing just a half beat behind every joke. Her eyes were glossy but bright. She looked proud, or so I thought. We'd been married 38 years. Raised 2 children. Buried both our parents, refinanced the house twice, survived an affair that never quite happened and a recession that did. I thought we were past surprises. The evening wound down slowly. Plates were cleared. Hugs and polite exits came in waves. A few stayed behind, lingering over espresso. Amanda leaned toward me, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "There's something I want to give you," she said softly, reaching into her purse. I thought it would be a letter. A card. Maybe something sentimental. A photo from our wedding day, an old poem, a note she'd been saving. What she pulled out was a manila envelope. My hand hovered as I took it. Something in the way she passed it over, like she was handing off dry cleaning. Her fingers didn't linger. No tremble. No hesitation. Just the dull scrape of paper against linen as it landed in my lap. I opened it. The first word I saw was petitioner. For a moment, the letters meant nothing. My brain processed the layout, the font, the structure, the formal spacing of legal language. Then it clicked. Amanda was filing for divorce. Right here. At my retirement dinner. In front of our friends, the last of my students, 2 of our cousins, and a half-empty bottle of Merlot. I looked up. She didn't flinch. She just folded her napkin gently into a triangle, placed it on her plate, and sipped the rest of her wine like we were talking about the weather. Her gaze didn't meet mine. She looked toward the window. The street lamp outside flickered. Around us, the clink of cutlery and conversation blurred into white noise. Someone asked me something, I don't remember who. I think I nodded. My hands felt too big. The papers trembled as I turned the first page. It was already signed. Filed. Served. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Something in my chest wasn't breaking, it was compressing. Folding into itself like a dying star. 38 years together, and this was the moment she chose. No warning. No conversation. Just a clean, clinical exit, the way you shut down a desktop computer. One click. Confirm. I folded the envelope closed and set it down beside my water glass. Amanda stood. "I'm going to head out now," she said, to no one in particular. Her voice was even. Almost gentle. "Drive safe, everyone." And then she was gone. People tried not to look at me. Their eyes darted, then fell back into their laps or their coffee cups. Someone coughed. Someone else offered me a tight smile, the kind people give at funerals. I sat there for a long time. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe more. The espresso had gone cold. The server came by and cleared a plate, asked if I needed anything else. I shook my head. When I finally stood, I didn't take the envelope. I left it there on the table, next to the crumbs and the wine stains and the flickering candle that Amanda had snuffed out with a pinch of her fingers. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. My car keys felt heavy. I drove home in silence. No radio. No headlights behind me. Just the gentle hum of retirement and the distant echo of something collapsing behind my ribs. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of rage, not even sadness exactly. Just static. A kind of thick mental fog where you're aware of every object in the room but feel no tether to any of them. The clock ticked like it always did, the old radiator hissed when it cycled on, and the streetlight outside blinked through the blinds like a metronome keeping time with a life I no longer recognized. I made coffee at 4 a.m., though I didn't need it. I wasn't tired. I just needed something to do with my hands. When the sun came up, I was still at the kitchen table, the envelope from the restaurant now resting between the sugar jar and my old laptop. I finally opened it again, carefully this time, reading each page slowly, like a student who knew he'd missed something important in the first pass. The language was surgical. Irreconcilable differences. Equitable distribution. Marital dissolution. It read like a recipe for disassembling a life. There were no accusations. No claims of abuse or neglect. Just a petition. Filed quietly 3 days before my retirement. Signed. Stamped. Prepared with legal elegance. It was the precision that bothered me most. Amanda had timed it. Planned it. Not in anger. That would have been easier to forgive. No, this was orchestrated. She waited for the applause to die down, the wine glasses to clink, and then handed me a contract like a corporate offboarding. By 9 a.m., I had pulled down the lockbox from the hallway closet. Inside, old tax returns, property documents, the original deed to the house we bought in '91, and a spreadsheet I'd been updating every quarter like clockwork since the kids were born, savings, mortgage payments, investment summaries. A habit born of practicality. I was never obsessive, just careful. But something didn't add up. The balance on our joint checking account was lower than expected. Not drastically, but enough to raise a quiet alarm. A quick scroll through the last few months of statements showed 3 large wire transfers, identical in amount, spread out over 12 weeks, each labeled Trust Relocation Fee. I didn't recognize the recipient account. I clicked open our brokerage profile. The joint portfolio had been sliced in half. 2 mutual funds sold off entirely, proceeds transferred out. Retirement funds? Mine remained untouched, but Amanda's had been moved into an independent rollover IRA. She hadn't told me. We were still legally married. We hadn't even argued in months. I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure what to type. The cursor blinked. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I opened a new folder, labeled it Financial Records, 2023, and began dragging in PDFs. Not for confrontation. Not to throw it in her face. Just to know. That's how it started. Quiet documentation. I printed copies. Labeled envelopes. Dug up our old refinance agreements. The home had been refinanced 2 years ago. Amanda had initiated it, citing home improvements. I remembered signing something late one evening, half asleep. She'd said it was paperwork to lock in a better rate. But the new title listed a living trust. One I'd never seen before. One that removed my name from ownership and designated Amanda as sole trustee. The document had my signature. Neat. Precise. Identical to the one on our marriage certificate. I don't remember signing that. I sat back in the kitchen chair, exhaled slowly, and looked around the room. Nothing had changed, but everything was rearranged in my mind. This wasn't a spontaneous collapse. It was a controlled demolition. Amanda hadn't broken the glass. She had slowly drained the water, set the cup back on the shelf, and waited for me to notice it was empty. I didn't call her. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I took a pen, opened a yellow legal pad, and wrote down 3 names. The law firm printed on the divorce papers, the financial institution tied to the trust transfers, and an old student of mine, Grace Patel, now a practicing attorney downtown. I didn't know what I was building yet, but I knew what it wasn't going to be. Not revenge. Not a spectacle. Just truth. On paper. Verified and dated. And this time, I would read every line. I remembered Grace from years ago, quiet, whip-smart, always 2 steps ahead in class discussions. She'd been the kind of student who didn't speak often, but when she did, the room got still. Back then, I taught her Shakespeare and syntax. Now I was hoping she could teach me something about defense and strategy. Her office was modest. No marble floors or panoramic city views, just a clean desk, tall stacks of file folders, and a single fern that looked healthier than I felt. She greeted me with a nod, not a handshake, and gestured to a chair across from her. "Mr. Hayes," she said, sitting down, "I was surprised to hear from you." "I didn't think I'd ever need a lawyer," I replied. "Everyone thinks that," she said. "Until they do." I passed her the folder I'd assembled: notes, bank records, a copy of the deed changes, Amanda's petition. She didn't read them right away. She just listened. "Let me talk." I told her about the dinner, the envelope, the wire transfers, the trust. My voice didn't crack once. I wasn't here for sympathy. When I finished, she looked down at the papers and started flipping through them slowly. Occasionally, she made a small mark in the margin or tapped a line with her pen. No commentary. No gasps. Just that quiet, clinical focus I remembered from her school days. After about 20 minutes, she looked up. "I assume you haven't responded to the petition yet?" "Not yet." "Good," she said. "You're doing this the right way." She explained things carefully: divorce timelines, asset tracing, the way family courts treat marital trusts. She didn't sensationalize anything. No horror stories, no dramatic warnings. Just law, structure, precedent. When I asked if Amanda's moves were illegal, she shook her head. "Not necessarily." "But suspicious?" "Yes. That's the difference. It's not about what she did. It's about when and how and whether she disclosed it properly." I nodded. "And if she didn't?" "Then we build a case. Not to ruin her, but to make it right." That's what struck me. She never spoke of winning. Only clarity, balance, paper trails. Her advice was simple, and it never changed. Don't react. Don't write angry emails. Don't show up unannounced. Don't threaten. "The one who speaks first usually loses the ground they're standing on," she said. "You've got one advantage right now: surprise. Let it work for you." She told me her team would begin by requesting discovery, formal access to Amanda's financial records over the past 5 years. Grace had a forensic accountant she trusted. They'd look for patterns, transfers, anomalies. I asked her what I should be doing in the meantime. "Live your life," she said. "Stay quiet. Document everything. If Amanda contacts you, be polite. Let her think nothing has changed." "Isn't that dishonest?" "No," she said. "It's legal strategy. If she made moves expecting you to roll over, don't correct her just yet." Her tone was calm, never cold. Detached, but human. She wasn't angry on my behalf, she was methodical. Like someone who didn't need to raise her voice because she knew the floor plan of the room better than anyone else inside it. By the time I left, she hadn't promised me a win. She hadn't promised anything. What she gave me was better. A blueprint. For the first time since Amanda handed me that envelope, I felt something close to solid ground. And I was going to walk it slowly, carefully, and without noise. 2 weeks passed before I heard back from Grace. She called on a Tuesday morning, her voice even, but with a quiet weight behind it. "We found some things," she said. "You'll want to come in." Her office hadn't changed. The fern looked bigger. Or maybe I was just shrinking. Grace didn't waste time with pleasantries. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of documents, notarized, time-stamped, filed. Official in every way. "This," she said, tapping the top page, "is the formation document for the Amanda Hayes Family Trust. Filed 2 years ago. It lists her as sole trustee." I stared at it. My name was nowhere. She continued. 3 months after its formation, Amanda began transferring assets into it. A savings account, 2 mutual funds, a portion of her pension. All classified under separate property, though some originated from marital income. I didn't speak. Just kept reading. The numbers were clear, methodical. Nothing sloppy. All above board, but hidden in plain sight. Grace turned the page. "Here's the title transfer on the house." I froze. "Our home. The one we bought together in '91. The one we painted 3 times. The one where both our kids took their first steps." The deed had been altered. Transferred into the trust. The beneficiary field was changed, no longer Michael and Amanda Hayes. Just the trust. Just her. "How?" I asked quietly. She pointed to the next page. A signed authorization. My signature at the bottom. You signed a power of attorney document 18 months ago. Limited scope, real estate only. I never signed that, I said. Grace nodded. You may not remember. She could have had you sign it as part of refinance paperwork. It's legal, if not ethical. The notary's stamp is real. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine. Slanted just enough to pass. But I couldn't place the moment. Couldn't summon the memory of the pen, the paper, the context. Only the feeling that something essential had been taken from me under the illusion of routine. She used it to refinance the home, Grace continued. Pulled out a portion of equity. Moved the property under the trust. Consolidated everything slowly, quietly. Over 18 months. For what? Grace folded her hands. We're not sure yet. Could be preparation for the divorce. Could be someone advising her, a financial planner, maybe a family law attorney working in the background. There was that word again. Preparation. Like this had been a campaign. A slow-moving machine I didn't even know I was standing inside. She didn't break any laws, Michael, Grace said gently. But she moved fast. With intent. And she didn't disclose any of it. Does it matter? She nodded. It does now. We can file a motion to challenge the classification of certain assets, especially those originating from joint income. And if we can prove undue influence or a lack of informed consent around the POA, we can contest the transfer of the home. I closed the folder. My hands felt cold. She never even looked nervous, I said. Grace leaned back, her expression unreadable. People like Amanda don't panic. They calculate. It wasn't anger I felt. It was erosion. The slow, quiet realization that while I'd been grading papers and counting down days to retirement, someone else had been redrawing the map beneath my feet. But the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the timestamps. She moved the money. She moved the house. She moved the goalposts. Now it was my turn to move, not loudly, not recklessly, just precisely. The name came back to me while I was folding laundry. Reed Ellison. Wore expensive loafers without socks and had a way of using your first name 3 times in a single sentence. Always made me feel like a guest in my own living room. Amanda said he was a financial wellness consultant. He said he worked with mature couples on retirement optimization, which sounded just vague enough to seem credible and just polished enough to shut down further questions. I hadn't thought about him in months. Maybe a year. But now that I looked back, I realized how often he'd been around Saturday mornings with spreadsheets, handing Amanda pre-filled forms, offering to take care of the confusing parts. He always insisted I didn't need to worry about the details. Said Amanda had it all handled. Happy wife, happy life, right, Michael? I'd nod, half listening, assuming it was all just estate planning. I was focused on finishing up at school. Grades, evaluations, the farewell ceremony. I trusted Amanda. That was the point of marriage, I thought, to delegate certain burdens. I told Grace about Reed the next time we met. Her reaction was quiet, but purposeful. I've heard the name, she said, tapping something into her laptop. Not a lot of direct complaints. But he's been on a few radars. 2 days later, she called me back. Reed Ellison doesn't carry any formal fiduciary certifications, she said. No CFP, no license to trade, no oversight body. But he's done business under 6 LLCs in the past 10 years, all short-lived, all related to marital asset planning. That was the phrase she used. Marital asset planning. She went on, in 3 other divorce cases we found, he was listed as a financial consultant for the wife. In each, the husband reported not fully understanding the paperwork signed in the years leading up to the divorce. Is he under investigation? I asked. No. He's too careful. Everything's technically above board. But it's a pattern. He preps the battlefield. Slowly moves assets out of joint reach. By the time the divorce papers are served, most of the pieces are already in place. My stomach turned. I remembered one afternoon, Amanda and Reed sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing something I'd apparently already signed. Reed had smiled, said it was just a refinance summary. I'd nodded, tired, assuming Amanda had vetted it. That's how it works, I realized. Not through deception. Through erosion. A slow dissolve of visibility. The illusion of mutual consent. Grace's voice broke through my thoughts. We can't prove coercion, but we can subpoena his correspondence. If we find anything emails, document versions, instructions sent only to Amanda, it could support a claim of undue influence. I didn't want to destroy Reed. I just wanted my signature back. The mediation was scheduled for a Wednesday morning, neutral ground, sterile office, complimentary coffee. Grace told me not to expect fireworks. This isn't TV, she said. It's paperwork and polite clothing. Amanda arrived 10 minutes late, dressed like someone headed to a gallery opening. Her lawyer, a confident man with perfectly parted hair and a leather folio, shook hands with everyone as if we were here to discuss golf scores. I nodded politely. Grace didn't smile. We were escorted into a room with glass walls and a long wooden table. The mediator, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense bob and a practiced calm, laid out the format. We're here for resolution, not recrimination, she said. Amanda barely looked at me. I didn't take it personally. That part had passed. I wasn't here to be seen, I was here to be understood, on record, on paper. Her lawyer began by outlining their proposal, division of assets based on Amanda's current holdings, retirement splits, and a few spousal maintenance suggestions. All sounded polite, reasonable, even until you remembered how much had been moved before any of this started. When they finished, Grace slid a slim binder across the table. We'd like to walk through a few timelines, she said. It wasn't theatrical. No raised voices. No gasps. Just timestamps, document versions, bank transfers, each one dated, each one verified. Grace's voice never changed pitch. She simply explained that a trust formed in secret, funded with marital assets, could not be claimed as separate property without full disclosure. She cited precedents. She highlighted the pattern, the wire transfers, the refinanced home, the shift in account names weeks before the filing. Every page turned was another inch off the ground beneath Amanda's case. Her lawyer tried to respond not with facts, but with tones. We don't believe Mr. Hayes expressed any objection during the refinance process. That indicates consent. Grace smiled, just faintly. Consent requires knowledge. We'd like to see the documentation that proves he was given full disclosure of the POA scope. We couldn't find any. Amanda shifted in her seat. I didn't speak until the end. Then, gently, I said, I don't want a war. I just want clarity. I spent 4 decades teaching young people how to read what's in front of them. Now, I'm just asking everyone here to do the same. The room went still. The mediator paused. Amanda looked down at her hands. She didn't cry. Amanda wasn't the type. But something softened in her posture, a realization, maybe, that I hadn't come to fight, but to prove I'd been watching all along. Quiet didn't mean weak. And calm didn't mean blind. The session ended without resolution. But the balance had shifted. Amanda walked out without saying a word. Her lawyer held the door. Grace and I stayed behind to sign some final summaries. You were perfect, she said, packing up. I didn't say much. You didn't need to. Because now the silence spoke volumes. It arrived on a Tuesday. No return address on the envelope, but I knew the handwriting instantly, angular, neat, the same loops and spacing that had once filled grocery lists, birthday cards, and love notes from a younger decade. It had been years since Amanda had written me anything by hand. I let it sit on the table for most of the morning. Made coffee. Paid a bill online. Stared out the kitchen window while the neighbor's dog barked at the wind. I didn't feel dread exactly. Just a sense that once I opened it, something would shift, not back to what it was, but toward something I hadn't yet defined. When I finally slid my finger beneath the flap and unfolded the paper, it wasn't what I expected. No preamble. No, dear Michael. Just, you surprised me. The sentence stood alone at the top. Simple. Unadorned. As if she were still trying to figure out whether that was praise or accusation. She went on. I thought I knew every version of you. The teacher. The father. The man who could find peace in things I found suffocating: silence, repetition, routine. I thought that kind of predictability meant you'd never shift. That you wouldn't fight. But you did. Not with yelling. Not with cruelty. But with something I never expected from you: clarity. The way you sat in that mediation room. The way you spoke only once, and only when it mattered. It made me realize I never really saw how strong you were. Or maybe I saw it once and then forgot. Her penmanship never wavered. No scribbled out words, no hesitation. But I could feel the restraint in every sentence. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't reaching for reconciliation. She was doing what Amanda had always done best, processing. There's something about knowing someone for nearly 40 years. You start writing their script for them. I assumed I knew how you'd react. I assumed you wouldn't care enough to respond. I was wrong. I didn't leave out of hate. I left because I felt like we'd stopped speaking the same language. Maybe we had. Or maybe I just stopped listening. There was a long paragraph about legacy, about how we spend so much time building a life that we forget to question who we're building it for. She mentioned the house, the trust, the way money had begun to feel like a form of control instead of comfort. I thought moving quietly, methodically, would spare us both the hurt. But silence doesn't prevent pain. Sometimes it just delays it until it's harder to name. Near the end, she wrote, I see now that you didn't raise your voice because you didn't need to. You didn't threaten or posture or punish. You just moved through the truth like a man who knew it would hold. That shook me more than anger ever could. She signed only her name. No promises. No questions. Just a letter from someone who, for the first time in a long time, saw me not as the man she'd married, but the man I'd become when she stopped paying attention. I folded it carefully, placed it in the drawer where I keep the quiet things that once mattered. And I sat with the strange comfort of being understood, even if it came too late to matter. The house sold in late spring. No dramatic listing. No open house with scented candles and cookies on the counter. Just a discreet transfer through a quiet agent Grace recommended, someone who specialized in properties with complicated emotional histories. That's how she phrased it. I didn't correct her. I boxed everything myself. Room by room. No rush. I took a week, maybe more. There was a kind of ritual in it, folding linens I wouldn't keep, labeling dishes I'd never use again. I didn't cry. I didn't reminisce. I just moved drawer to drawer, shelf to shelf, like I was undoing a life one cabinet at a time. When I reached the attic, I found an old plastic bin filled with photos. Our kids at the beach. Christmas cards from the late 90s. A few letters from my mother, soft, faded ink in her looping cursive. She used to write me every month during my first year of teaching. Encouragements. Little reminders that what I was doing mattered. She was the only one who never asked why I chose a quiet life. Why I didn't take bigger risks, louder paths. She just believed in stillness as a form of strength. I smiled at the thought. Folded the letters back up. The day the sale closed, I stood in the empty living room and listened to the echo of my own breath. No ceremony. No last glance backward. Just the quiet thud of the door closing behind me. I didn't keep the house because I didn't need a monument. It had served its purpose, not as a home, but as a turning point. A chessboard Amanda thought she'd cornered me on. But in the end, it was just a piece of property, and I had learned how to move my pieces without raising my voice. The profit was modest. Comfortable, but not life-changing. I didn't need all of it, so I donated a portion, enough to start a small scholarship fund at the local high school. English department, of course. In my mother's name. Quiet voice, strong mind, that was the title we gave it. Grace said it was perfect. It didn't make headlines. No plaques, no articles. Just a line item in the school newsletter and a discreet endowment that would help a few students a year buy books, pay for college essays, maybe fund a train ticket to an interview they thought they'd never make. That was enough. Letting go isn't about closure. It's about recognizing when something has already closed, whether you acknowledged it or not. The house had stopped being mine long before the paperwork was filed. But this small act in my mother's name, this was mine. And it was more permanent than walls could ever be. I hadn't planned to be there. The new venue sat just outside town, a sleek resort tucked between Cedar Hills and a quiet lake. Expensive, tasteful, full of glass and polished stone. I knew the place. Amanda had mentioned it once in passing, before everything cracked. The family reunion was being held there this year, bigger than before. Catered. Coordinated. My name was not on the list, and I hadn't been invited. I didn't expect to be. But that morning, I found myself walking nearby. Not out of curiosity, really, more like muscle memory. A slow Saturday, a quiet trail, the scent of spring on the breeze. I passed the resort entrance just as a shuttle van pulled up. I saw them before they saw me. Cousins, second cousins, children who'd once scribbled on the walls of my living room with markers. Laughter floated across the pavement. The kind that comes when people haven't seen each other in years, but fall back into rhythm instantly. I didn't hide. I just slowed down. Someone spotted me, Margaret, maybe. Or Elaine. One of Amanda's cousins who always brought too much potato salad. She gave a small wave, surprised but warm. A few others glanced up. Recognition flickered, but no one called out. I nodded politely. No bitterness. No performance. Just a simple acknowledgement that I was still here. That I had not disappeared or unraveled. That I had endured and, in doing so, had transformed. Amanda didn't see me, or maybe she did and chose not to. She stood near the fountain, laughing at something someone said. She looked good, like someone who had edited her past and left out the parentheses. I felt nothing sharp in that moment. No spike of regret. Just a strange, serene acceptance. I walked on. At the corner of the resort property was a small overlook where the trees thinned out. I paused there, watching the lake shimmer below, the surface smooth and undisturbed. A single canoe glided through it, slow, deliberate. No ripples left behind. That's what justice had felt like to me in the end. Not the pounding of a gavel or a public reckoning. Not a victory speech or a ruined opponent. It had whispered. Through documents. Through dates. Through facts lined up like dominoes that Amanda had tipped over without realizing I'd watched them fall. I didn't win by being louder. I won by knowing what was mine. And proving it, one quiet truth at a time. The letter she wrote now rested in a drawer at home, beside the legal records and my mother's old notes. Not because I needed to keep it, but because I understood its place, a closing chapter, not a crack in the door. I turned from the lake, put my hands in my pockets, kept walking. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole.